Well, hello there, listener. Let's see. Thursday, the 22nd of February, and a fat totally show ready for you, featuring Duncan Alexander.
Hello.
Hello, Duncan. Charlie Eccleshare.
Hello.
Hello, Charlie. And also Natalie Gedra from Sky Sports.
Hola.
Hola, Natalie. How's everyone?
Yeah,
How are your miserable lives as journalists?
Well, we're not as good as the treble winner manager, but we're doing okay.
Doing okay. All right. It's been a busy midweek, eh? Loads of midweek action. Duncan, Bradford, Wickham in the Bristol Street Motors Trophy.
Yeah, big game, bad pitch.
Right.
Good outcome.
Wickham went through?
Yeah, they didn't deserve to. They played very poorly in Bradford. I mean, I'm assuming most people didn't watch this game. The Bradford's pitch is no longer... Do you remember the game at Chelsea in the early 2000s? Yeah, it was pretty much like that, but a little bit more muddy. But so it was almost impossible to play football, and then there was more rain.
It rained on their parade.
Yeah, literally.
Because it's called Valley Parade. It's Bradford.
And yeah, Bradford dealt with it better, but Wickham, a team who've let in a lot of late goals this season, scored one of their own and off to Wembley.
I wanted a match report. Brilliant. They're going to be at Wembley.
They will be playing at, the Wembley Stadium.
Fantastic. All right. Who are they playing at? Is it the final already, or is it?
Playing their grudge match rivals, Peterborough United.
Ooh.
So that adds a bit of spice. Probably the best bit from the game actually was Wickham's Luke Lee. He was booked for wiping the ball on a steward's jacket, which is one of the lesser spotted yellow
Gentlemanly
cards.
conduct.
Yeah, but he apparently did it on a Bolton flag playing for Shrewsbury last season. So he likes to, dry things.
Will you go to the final?
Yes.
Take the kids?
Yeah. My daughter's become a big Wickham fan this season.
Nice.
So,
All right. Bristol Street Motors.
they'll be dancing on the streets of Bristol Street Motors.
Also in action midweek, Manchester City and Liverpool continued their Premier League charge. City beat Brentford 1-0 with a Haaland goal late on. Liverpool did their kind of Barca 2019 cosplay thing against Luton, coming from a goal down to win 4-1. In America, the 2024 MLS season kicked off. Inter Miami against Real Salt Lake, Charlie. 2-0 for Inter Miami. Suarez and Messi turned up for this one. They didn't do the scoring, but anyway, that's nice. And, of course, there was the Champions League. The Champions League, another 4 last 16 ties. Anyway, what a stunner from Galeno. The last kick of the game, effectively. He'd had that amazing chance at the 21st minute. Double chance, yeah. But yeah, what a strike.
I went to look him up.
Oh, yeah?
Yes, because there were plenty of Brazilians playing that match between Arsenal and Porto. And it's very common that Brazilians, they go to Portugal for passports. A lot of Brazilians have Portuguese passports because of family. And he's 26 already, and I've never heard of him. And in Brazil, he's not known at all. Wenderson Galeno. He had a year and a half in Brazil. He played for a small club in Goiás, in the central of the country. He joined Porto in 2016. He was just 19. And then he's one of those careers that were built in Portugal. So he was on loan in other Portuguese clubs. He played for Portimonense, Rio Ave. He played for Braga. He was sold to Braga. That was intriguing. He was sold to Braga, and then he did really well at Braga. And then Porto looked at him and said, no, we want him back. And then they activated a clause in his contract of rebuying him.
Oh, yeah? Nice.
Yes,
The old
yes.
buyback.
Yes. And then, now he's scoring goals in the Champions League.
Potentially priceless goal. Although 1-0. I mean, Arsenal lost 2-1, was it, at Lens? They do this a fair bit, don't they?
Well, their home form in Champions League, they've won 4-0, 2-0 and 6-0 this season. So I think even with a 1-0 deficit, they would still be the favourites to go through and they would back themselves. But obviously, it does change things, especially as this was a really painful evening for them against the low block. They didn't really create much. And obviously now with a lead, Porto will go and sit just as deep, if not deeper, and try the same tactic, which largely worked really well.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because in the Champions League this season, teams haven't sat off Arsenal, and Arsenal, as you say, have picked them off. And it's almost like Porto have gone, hang on, how
Maybe
Arsenal
let's
getting
not do that.
pegged back in the Premier League? Oh, yeah, let's do that.
Yeah.
We've got, and obviously they've got some players who are quite adept at doing that. So I think it might be quite hard for Arsenal to break them down in the second leg, but still make them favourites.
Right. If they have some shots on target, for example.
That would help, definitely, yeah.
I think if they had Jesus back as well, who,
Right.
whatever people think about him in the Champions League, he is superb generally.
What is the prognosis as for his return?
Well, it keeps dragging on. He played against Forest, scored and set up a goal, but played through injury. He's had this knee issue, but that was 3 weeks ago now, and it keeps sort of getting delayed. And he had the surgery back end of 2022, came back, has had niggles. So it is a bit of a worry.
But honestly, how intriguing is that the same team that scored 21 goals in the past 5 matches didn't have a shot on target? And after the match, they were mentioning the wingers, that they weren't involved enough, especially in the first half, which is something that we heard during this season, that opponents were targeting Martinelli and Saka. But when they did get involved in the second half, they weren't making the right decisions. The final decisions weren't going their way. So.
Right.
It's
Arsenal's set-piece game as well, which has been such a factor this year. They weren't able to produce anything from that. But credit goes to Porto, who you imagine did the homework.
They did.
And that's now their 6th straight clean sheet at home. So,
I mean, in the olden days, losing 1-0 away in this sort of game with the away goals rule would have been really dangerous for Arsenal. But now it isn't. And this does feel like a sort of game that highlights that kind of missed that bit of jeopardy, really.
Even 0-0, I used to think was a really good result for the home, or was a better result than it seemed for the home team.
Yeah.
Because, then you could go away and you just needed the one, and suddenly there's kind of panic at the home stadium.
This midweek in general in the Champions League felt a little bit flat, and I wonder if the absence of the away goal jeopardy, which, I mean, it is in some ways an artificial
I think it's one
twist,
of the it was one of the best rules in football.
Was it?
I love the away goals rule.
I love it.
Yeah, it makes it feel like European football as well. Like
Yeah.
this is just the Carabao Cup with a bit more glamour.
And one of the best things about the away goals rule was that it meant extra time was so much less likely, and extra time is just generally really bad in football. And just having that kind of, you can go from winning to losing with 1 goal was an amazing dynamic. But yeah, this was a bit of a return to those Christmas festive games that Arsenal had, where they struggled if they not going ahead early. That said, I think for them, 0-0, which it was a 0-0 game really. That was it was an amazing goal to settle it. Kind of came out of nowhere. 0-0 would have been a pretty good result for them. They would have happily taken that.
Except that now Porto can draw. Porto have had 22 competitive matches in European competition in England. They've won none of them. They have drawn 3 but lost the other 19. So those are the numbers.
One was that one at the famous Old Trafford, Mourinho,
of course,
dancing down the touchline, which was they'd won the first leg that time in Porto, hadn't they? And then that got them the draw.
There was
the away leg took them through.
a Paul Scholes goal called offside, which was possibly not.
How different Mourinho's career might.
How different his suit would have looked.
Well, yeah,
fewer grass stains.
Absolutely, but no, they did. Porto did do really well from the set pieces, and Arsenal's big. Sort of one of their weapons at those is Ben White, who is a real irritant, goes and gets by the goalkeeper. And weirdly, a lot of teams seem to just let him do it. But obviously Porto were wise to it. And I mean, every corner there was just grappling and quiet words from the ref. I mean, there was a good stat that went round. I think the ball was in play for, let me just get the numbers up, but it was nothing. I mean, it was like 45 minutes of the game. The ball was in play for just 51.7% of the game. By some distance, the lowest percentage of any of the round of 16 ties so far this season. Lazio Bayern, by way of comparison, was 66.9. That's Sam Dean tweeted that. And that does tell the story. I mean, it was so stop-start. It was a really boring, bitty game, I thought.
Yeah, and in Premier League terms, Arsenal are pretty high normally in terms of ball in play. So, it was. You could say it was a job well done.
Yeah, they played on their terms,
Porto.
didn't they, Porto?
Yeah.
There you go. 3 weeks' time, they'll be at the Emirates. We'll see how that works out. Saturday, meantime, Arsenal will be facing Newcastle, looking to bounce back and avenge their 1-0 defeat at St James's Park back in November, which was the subject of some controversy. Do you recall this, Natalie, an Anthony Gordon goal that had a long...
we had so...
5 minutes ago.
We're still checking that goal. No, but it seems like it seems like it was a lifetime ago, honestly, for both teams, I think, and especially for Newcastle, because they've been leaking so many goals. And if I were a Newcastle fan, I'd be so worried about the duel between Dan Burn and Saka. As much as he didn't have a good midweek, he's Oh my God, he's so he's so in form, and then Burn, he's been struggling. It's been a theme for Newcastle that he's struggled a few times against very quick opponents. It was very clear against Ogbene in that 4-4 with Luton, so that was a big talking point. And Newcastle, I mean, in the Premier League, Arsenal, they're in a real scoring form, and they've been leaking a lot of goals. And it's down to many things, not only the goalkeeper. You know, you have Dubravka, who's an excellent goalkeeper, but he's different from Nick Pope. But you have changes in the midfield, and you have the speed that is not happening. So, I'd be worried if I was a Newcastle fan, especially with Arsenal's speed.
He did well in this. I know things have changed for him, but Dan Burn did well in this fixture last year. It was said yesterday during the game, this will be the first 0-0. So that was the last 0-0 Arsenal had.
Really?
Was against Newcastle 13 months ago.
Do you know, Newcastle have only ever won once at the Emirates. That was in 2010. And they haven't scored a goal there for 9 years.
Yeah, Iosi Perez.
There you go.
And it was Andy Carroll who scored that winner in 2010, just
I
before he
cannot
left.
see another 0-0 for this match.
No.
honestly.
No.
Although I think the fact that Arsenal played, quite a tight turnaround and also made basically no subs. Jorginho was the only player who came on, so all their attacking players pretty much did the full 90. If Jesus isn't back, then, which you assume he won't be, then there's no one else that Arteta seems to really trust, unless he started Jorginho and moved things around, so meant he had a Trossard maybe or someone to come on. But he's kind of relying on the same group of players. And I did think that was telling yesterday. He made one sub, and which kind of tells you how he views the rest of those subs. If you're not bringing them on in a 0-0 last 16 Champions League tie, he probably doesn't think there's a huge amount of use for them.
Which is concerning, because obviously we're getting to the point where last season Arsenal kind of ran out of steam a bit.
Yeah, I think the key is when those players like Zinchenko, Tomiyasu, Jesus, Partey all being out, when they come back and then Arsenal have a squad again, because at the moment they've played the same 11 3 games running, and the gap then from those starters to the guys on the bench seems to be huge, certainly in Arteta's eyes. So I do think that will be really important as to whether they can sustain a title challenge and Champions League run.
Okay. That game coming up anyway against Newcastle at 8 o'clock on Saturday.
Natalie mentioning Dan Burn reminded me that we've sadly just passed the 10-year point since his famous game for Fulham. Remember where David Moyes, Manchester United, when United made 81 crosses.
Yeah.
Dan Burn headed away most of them. So, it's good that he's still operating in a different position 10 years later. What a man.
Wow.
Magnificent. Nice. There you go. Anyway, more Champions League up next as we get on to the other game Wednesday and the Tuesday matches. Tuesday, Inter beat Atletico Madrid 1-0. Goal by Arnautovic. Oof, he needed that as well. That same evening, PSV Eindhoven were 1-1 with Borussia Dortmund. And the other game on Wednesday
That wasn't a penalty.
I mean, it
It wasn't.
So this was Mats Hummels,
Yes.
who goes in on Malik Tillman. But then he goes in with his studs up, gets the ball, but then is basically lying as a kind of human barrier to the player, and his forward momentum takes him over and he trips. So I don't know which part gets the penalty.
Yeah. I have to say, when I heard the outrage of like how's this given as a penalty, then I saw it and I kind of thought, sort of can see why that hasn't been overturned. Like, I don't know if it meets that threshold. Like, I didn't think it was as outrageous as most seem to.
People who watched this game attentively felt that it was a fair result anyway, the 1-1. All right, Natalie. Anyway, on Wednesday...
I'm by myself in this.
How did you feel about
Come
the
on,
1-1?
Duncan.
No. 1-1 as well for Napoli and Barcelona on Wednesday. Wasn't a great game, have to say.
It wasn't a great game.
No.
It was a decent performance from Barcelona. They haven't had many of these during the season. So I was looking the Spanish press, which is always interesting, because if it's a so-so, it's kind of a good performance, they either think it's tragic or the best performance ever, but it was like the right tone, so I think that says a lot about how Barcelona played. It was okay, but I think that the big story is at Napoli.
Yeah,
the new manager.
Yeah, Barcelona were very much in control of the first part, in which Napoli looked kind of lost, and it's understandable because their new manager had one training session with them after being brought in on Tuesday. His name, as we were discussing in Tuesday's Euro show, Francesco Calzona. And this was the first club match he'd ever managed as well. How about that for your first club match? Have a go with Barcelona in the Champions League. Yeah. He had been, he was assistant to Maurizio Sarri when he was at Napoli. The pair of them had become friends back when Sarri was... Do you remember when Sarri was a banker who used to dabble in management? And
I love this career path that we see in Italy.
Calzona's a little bit similar. He used to sell coffee or coffee vending machines, which is a bit of a troubling thought in Italy. But anyway, he was involved in the coffee trade, in big coffee. And he was also... doing a bit of he used to be a bit of a player, and he was doing some kind of amateur level coaching, and they kind of became friends. And when Sarri started to move up through the ranks, he called Calzona in as his assistant, and he was still there when Spalletti joined. So he had a year with Spalletti. So the feeling was, he knows the club and that.
Spalletti and Calzone sounds like a really nice meal, but not quite.
Doesn't it?
I was going to say, what does obviously calzone has that meaning? What does the word actually mean?
Well, calze are your socks, no? So a calzone, something oni, is a big something. So calzone is like a big sock, which is obviously exactly what a calzone looks like.
Yeah.
But a calzona is a feminine one. But anyway, what it meant was that they had a man in charge who actually made some good substitutions, the press felt, and rescued Napoli from their befuddlement. And they came into the game after Lewandowski had finally put away one of Barcelona's chances. His fifth goal in his last 5 matches, a swivel and shoot through 2 defenders, past the outstretched Merit, who'd been pretty much the only good player for Napoli till that point. But then Napoli found some form. They came out in the second half with a lot more confidence and attacking intent. And Victor Osimhen, to no one's great surprise, it was who grabbed the equaliser. And they could have had a winner. Well, both sides could have, to be fair. There were chances.
Won it, didn't he? Now?
Yeah, he could have done.
I mean, Lewandowski's goal was amazing, I thought.
Did you like it?
I just thought, I mean, I love goals that you think so few players could have scored that. And how few players could score with that little backlift, with that many defenders around. It's just such a proper striker's goal. I really liked it. I did think as well, this game is kind of symptomatic of this slightly weird last 16, that you've got 2 clubs like Napoli and Barca who seem kind of crisis clubs. You don't have Liverpool in there. You don't have Bayer Leverkusen in there. Like, it doesn't feel like the best teams in Europe are necessarily even in it, on top of the fact that some of those who probably are in those best 16 teams aren't doing that well at the moment. Like, it does feel like quite an open last 16, or more so than usual. Yeah,
well, the 8 ties that we've had in the last 16, only 2 teams have got a 2-goal lead going into the second leg. That's Man City, who were 3-1 winners a week ago in Copenhagen. And PSG, although is a 2-goal lead, a 2-goal lead when it's PSG? I don't know. Anyway, they will be travelling to the Anoeta to take on Real Sociedad in a fortnight. The other game, as I mentioned, was Inter taking on Atletico, which was a proper Champions League last 16 tie. And I don't think the scoreline reflects the level of Inter dominance. Atletico didn't have a shot on target. Inter had plenty, scuffed and skied all of them, particularly Marko Arnautovic, who came on, who I don't think was a particularly great player for Inter back when he was part of the treble-winning side under Mourinho over a decade ago. Has been off kind of journeymanning his way.
Yeah, I mean, what a
West
career.
Ham.
Part of that Stoke team that had 5 Champions League winners. Which was a great moment.
He comes in now, and he came onto the field because Marcus Thuram has been such a great strike partner for Lautaro Martinez, picked up an injury, and then Marko Arnautovic comes on, and the fans are really beginning to fear the worst. But eventually, after one particularly egregious miss, Lautaro Martinez's chance gets squared to him, and he puts it away.
He does. I thought the defender was going to clear it on the line. I mean, it was close,
especially
the day he was the night he was having.
Yeah.
And to be fair, Oblak he played a good match, and he hasn't been playing that well this season. And I don't know what to think of this 1-0, because Atletico they play so differently at the Wanda. So it's all very open still, because they were very conservative in Italy. They properly defended, and now they're going to play their game in Wanda Metropolitano, and they're going to play a crazy second half probably. They're going to hold back in the first half and go for it in the second half. So it's all very open in this fixture.
Yeah, Inter haven't lost a game away from home all season. In fact, they've only had 1 defeat all season. They've also had in the Champions League, 4 clean sheets in their 7 matches now, 21 in all competitions this season, which is mad. So, yeah, watching them
I think
against that Atletico is going to be, I think, the tie of the second leg.
Yeah, I think so. I think Inter, I mean, with the proviso Man City are still there, I think this is quite an open Champions League this season. And Inter have got, they were in the final last year. They're a good team. I think they've got a really good chance.
All right. Did you see Kanye West at San Siro? Did you, though?
Well,
did you see a hooded figure wearing a black full-face balaclava?
Yeah, it looked like a sock, ironically. He should have been in Napoli.
Big sock. Big old sock. I didn't realise that Arnautovic as well was still at Bologna. I mean, he's on loan from Bologna.
Right. Yeah.
High-flying Bologna.
Yeah.
Who I saw when I went to Bologna in October.
Did you?
Yeah. And we were really impressed with them.
I like the way you said when you went to Bologna. I saw Bologna when I went to Bologna.
Yeah. Surprisingly enough, Bologna in Bologna, the way to do it. No, I loved them as a team.
Yeah.
I thought they were really good, and it's been you then keep your eye on them a little bit.
Yeah,
they're doing
Is it
great.
Lewis Ferguson?
Yeah, he scored.
Yeah.
Lewis Ferguson, which
And
really
Xerxes
excited.
the
Xerxes,
player.
he was superb. Yeah, and I think he may well be moving to a big club.
And as much as Xavi Alonso is very much the hot ticket managerially speaking, I think Thiago Motta is going to be the other name that a lot of clubs are going to be seeking, who was Arnautovic's teammate. Although Arnautovic barely played in that Inter treble-winning side under Mourinho. Anyway,
he was the one who got elbowed, wasn't he, by Busquets?
I believe he might have been.
Or no, other way around. He did the elbow to
Did
Busquets,
he?
got the sending off early on, which was why Inter were playing with 10 men for most of that Barca.
It's the most
second leg.
one-sided game ever.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, all returning in a fortnight, the Champions League. Liverpool were not involved in the competition, but thanks to a generous quirk of the calendar, they did get to play this week on a Champions League Wednesday. They had that come-from-behind win against Luton, and Jurgen squinted a bit and said it was a bit like that time when they beat Barcelona afterwards. We'll talk about that and Sunday's Carabao Cup final, Chelsea-Liverpool, next. Listener, you got your freshers bunting out, and you've rounded up the neighbours for a street party because it's Carabao Cup Sunday. Chelsea-Liverpool, 3 o'clock, of course. The action begins at Wembley, but for many of us, this encounter's already underway. We're playing it in our minds. Natalie, you're going to be there. You've got the hot ticket.
Yes. Very excited.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah?
you know, after the Luton game, James, Jurgen Klopp was talking to the press and he said something in the lines of, will we be favorites? Will we be the big favorites for this final? Definitely not. Because of the injury list and because... Basically, the injury list, really. And because Chelsea is, they just come from the back of a good performance against Manchester City.
Is this the same Chelsea who Liverpool beat 4-1 a couple of months ago?
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. But it made me think, who is the favorite, really?
I don't know. Who is the favourite?
Is Liverpool still... I think Liverpool's still the favorite because they've shown good football consistently. More often throughout the season, while Chelsea, they show progress, signs of progress, definitely. And especially against City, I think they were able to set themselves up and pressure in the right way. They didn't go all in and they didn't have the low block. So they got that really, really well. But with Liverpool, it's a complete different dynamic. But the injury list is quite worrying,
So the game on Wednesday night against Luton sounded quite dramatic. I was busy with Champions League. It wasn't on TV, but you were able to see because you work for Sky Sports. What was all the fuss about?
I think second half they were very efficient. First half wasn't so good, and merits to Luton as well. They played a really good first half, but I think the fuss was especially around the injury list and how Liverpool was able to deliver a good performance and deliver an important win with such a young team. They starting 11 was 25 years and 68 days, the club's youngest since February 2018, and on the bench they had 5 players aged 19 or under, with one 16-year-old.
Right.
Yes. So that, I think the fuss was especially around because if you look at the starting 11 against Luton, the front three, it completely it's a completely different dynamic when you have Diaz, Gakpo, and Harvey Elliott. So during the first half, they weren't getting things right, and Klopp said it himself that they were rushing things a lot. And on the second half, they got that right. But when you don't have Nunez and you don't have Salah involved, because they weren't even on the bench, and Jota, because he's not going to play for a while. While Nunez and Salah, they still have a chance to play Carabao Cup final. So it was important for them to deliver a performance with a lot of goals and get the win without so many important players.
Okay.
Well, it was a very Carabao Cup team that they put out in a kind of classy nod to the final.
Yeah, that is a good point, actually. Kelleher and goal, obviously.
Yeah.
Ogbenia put Luton ahead in the first half, and then Liverpool stormed back in the second. 2 goals in 2 minutes from Van Dijk and Cody Gakpo, double Dutch. Luis Diaz, who had squandered, I think that's the term.
Yeah, Liverpool missed 4 big chances in the game. So
4. And then Harvey Elliott made it 4-1 in his 100th appearance for Liverpool. I'm astonished that he's made 100 appearances already.
Still only 20. Wow. He's, I mean, it was funny, I think, because obviously it was, Liverpool did wake up in the second half, but Rob Edwards said, we made them angry. And I think there's a few ways that visiting managers can go at Anfield. There's the kind of like grumpy version, which we've seen, or there's the kind of lean into the heritage of Liverpool. And it was, Edwards was even sort of congratulating Jadon Danns at full time, sort of saying, I played with your dad. And it's almost like there's a managerial opportunity coming up at Liverpool. And everyone loves Rob Edwards, but he was on very conciliatory form, shall we say.
It was a really good and important win for them, because I think people would have been looking at that team, the starting 11, and thinking maybe it's a chance of some drop points, and Luton are really tricky opponents, so to come back like they did, and the goal difference battle, which is ongoing, really good, that they keep sort of this and Brentford to win both those games 4-1.
Right,
that's really.
I mean, it's
that's
very
really
unusual. But City, albeit with a game in hand on Liverpool, but not on Arsenal anymore.
They've got third best, haven't they?
Yeah, which is really unusual for Manchester City. And
so City now a point behind Liverpool.
No, they're 4 behind
with a game in hand.
Oh, I haven't updated my table since yesterday. There you go.
Unlike the podcast.
Yeah, but, nicely done.
Yeah.
Right, YouTube viewers.
Yeah. Hello. But yeah, I think we can all hope that it's a proper 3-way title race, because you don't get that many. They are rare. Yeah, 2013, 14, probably the last one.
Which people don't really think of, because Chelsea.
It could be 4-team title race, really.
Yeah, for a while. But I mean, Chelsea being the third wheel in that a bit, which people don't really think.
They got away. They fell off, and they got away with that because everyone was focused on.
Yeah. Was that Istanbul? Was that the Liverpool? Yeah. Okay.
And it was also them. Obviously, Chelsea beating Liverpool. That was the Demba Ba Gerrard slip, but Chelsea were basically out.
What? I've never heard about that. What happened?
All it was.
I mean, to Liverpool's injury problems and squad depth, this is the earliest in a top flight season they've ever had 5 players reach double figures for goals, and it's the Fab Five, or whatever you want to call them. But I mean, I guess Gakpo's probably been the least celebrated of those this season, and now he's got a really good opportunity.
Their depth there is amazing. To have those 5 players and be able to rotate them.
And they're just so different from one another, which, you can go both ways, because they're very different from one another.
Yeah, and actually, I always thought the Mane, Firmino, Salah, how Liverpool moved on from that was always going to be really, really hard. And I think we saw that last season. And I still think that was a generational front 3. But they're doing something a bit different with the 5 that they can rotate. And as Natalie says, those different options, that they've done that really well.
And underrated player of the year, Endo, obviously back from Asia Cup duty, and a genuinely good player.
So would you make Liverpool favourites then? Let's talk a little bit about Chelsea, who weren't in action midweek, will be arriving fresh, have looked a little bit better of late.
Yeah, they have. But I mean, their season has been sort of pockmarked with these periods where you think they're getting better, then they step back and look worse again. I think they'll make this competitive, but I do think Liverpool. I would.
Chelsea remind me of a space program, in the fact that there's been a lot of money spent on it, and rockets get launched, and sometimes they don't work and they crash. But then sometimes they do, and it's the technology is coming good. So,
will they be over the moon come Sunday afternoon?
Yeah, I wonder.
One wonders, doesn't one? These two teams. Sorry, Natalie, you go ahead, because I was just going to mention a couple of seasons ago when they met Chelsea and Liverpool in the FA Cup and League Cup final, and both games ended 0-0 and went to penalties.
FA Cup one less so.
Right. League Cup one was the one that went so deep that the keepers had to take
and
it.
that was a great
It was
one.
0-0,
Yeah.
but there
It
were
was
a lot of
the
chances.
best 0-0 of the season.
Yeah.
It was amazing. Yeah.
Anyway, that was then. But to your point,
No, I think it's good news for Chelsea that Dizazi and Colwill did really well against Man City. So when you don't have Thiago Silva, and because obviously he's injured, so it's important for players to step up in this sense. And Malo Gusto looked well as well. So when you have Liverpool's strength up front, you really need your defenders.
a lot of people ask, what does Malagusto mean? It doesn't actually quite. It's like calzona, no? It's one vowel away from being bad taste.
Yes, kind of, yeah. Because gusto can mean a few things, but it can mean taste.
Okay.
Yes, to taste something.
Does it sound strange to you, Malagusto?
And this podcast makes me think of things that I've never really thought about.
You're not
So
doing that? Okay.
I think
no,
of that.
of course you do.
Tell you what leaves a bad taste. Your keeper refusing to come off when you want to sub him in a
Right.
League Cup final.
Yeah,
The Chelsea
Kepa.
City game.
But with Thiago Silva as well, I get the sense that for all he is still really important to them, there is this feeling that actually they can play in a very different way without him, and that's the way forward for them probably from next season. So it's interesting. But I wonder if and when he is fit, does Pochettino stop playing him, or is that too bold a move?
Yeah, well, you're asking a Thiago Silva huge
exactly,
fan,
yeah.
so I wouldn't stop playing, because I think his power of anticipation and reading the plays, it's like no one else. But you do get more mobility and you have more speed, of course, when you have different players as Dizazi and Colwill playing the back for
we saw
Chelsea.
yesterday Pepe, who's 40.
Yeah,
He's still
and counting.
Still
41
got
next
it.
week.
Is it 41 next week? Yeah, there you
41 next
go.
week?
I did think that. Yeah, when I heard he was only 40, I thought he'd be older than that. So
And he will
that
be.
makes sense. He soon will be. But yeah, with Thiago Silva and Hit, there's still a place for the veterans.
Yes, no, definitely. But and Chelsea, they have such a talented midfield. They just need to find their right pace there. I think pace is going to be important in this fixture.
Okay.
I mean,
Well, look-
Pochettino lost the 2015
Yeah,
League Cup
his
final.
first season at Spurs.
Also lost to Klopp in a pretty big final a few years later.
Oh, let's hope Sunday is going to be better than
That
that,
game.
because that
That
match
was terrible, yeah.
was not
It was
exciting.
hot. That was what people always say about that game. It was really hot.
Yeah, and 3 weeks after the Premier League season
Yeah,
finished,
that's the
wasn't it? So
important
it did
thing.
have like a
Yeah.
sort of post-season friendly feel.
Also, that game didn't have a place in the Europa Conference League riding on it for the winners. So,
That's true.
yeah, which whoever emerges victorious from the game Sunday will be making their plans for far-flung European stadia.
I mean, that is Chelsea are in the position where they could do Conference League, get that. Then they could win the FA Cup. That gets Europa League, doesn't it? So they could sort of be trumping themselves. And obviously, they could still do it through the league, but this does feel like their best route.
All right, well, enjoy the game, Natalie,
I will.
on Sunday. And let's next up move on to the Premier League action that's taking place this weekend. Premier League this weekend, no lunchtime game on Saturday. There's 4 games that you can't watch at 3 o'clock. That's Palace Burnley with Palace's new manager Oliver Glasner. Villa Forest, the Centre Parks Classico, as I like to call it. Man United, Fulham and Brighton Everton. That was 5-1 for Everton last season. Still reeling at that. 5:30, there's the latest chapter in what is, I think I'm right in saying, Duncan, the most one-sided series in English top flight football.
League history,
Yeah?
19 games Bournemouth have played against City and have never won.
Right. And 13 games so far in the Premier League, and
And
it's
lost them.
13 wins for City. So they go again at the Vitality Stadium Saturday tea time, and then at 8 o'clock, Newcastle will be visiting Arsenal. 8 o'clock, that's brutal, isn't it? It'll be as tough getting home from there as Royston Vasey. Yeah.
Very much so.
One game on
Brown's
the...
real name, of course. Roy Chubby Brown's real name.
Exactly, yeah.
I mean, but that would have been 12:30, but it got moved because
Ah.
of the rule that if you've played away, certainly in Europe, and it might be away generally, but definitely away in Europe, you can't go Wednesday night away in Europe, and then 12:30.
Even if you're Liverpool?
Saturday. Even if you're Liverpool. And Liverpool, I think, are the last team to do it. Away at Newcastle in what would have been April 2022?
That's
or
amazing.
May 2022?
Amazing.
Space,
Okay.
yeah.
So it's all right. So it's not the TV bigwigs' fault. It's the rules.
Them's the rules.
Them's the rules. Okay. There's a game on Sunday. It's Wolves Sheffield United. That's at 1:30. Don't know how that happened. And then on Monday night, you got West Ham Brentford. A quick mention for Man City and their 1-0 win against Brentford. Anybody want to express any?
Yeah, I mean, Brentford did pretty well in this game, actually. And it was quite weird because they just got a little bit carried away and sort of sent a few players forward. And then City countered and there's a slip in there. I mean, it's a slip that I don't think would happen almost against any other player but Haaland. I think the defender's so fearful that he's about to get in a one-on-one with Haaland. And it was quite a similar situation to Haaland against Branthwaite a couple of weeks ago, and Haaland just absolutely charged past him. But yeah, I think Ayer just fell over, so he didn't have to get involved in that duel, and Haaland went through. But yeah, a big win for them. It looked like it might be a frustrating one.
Yeah, lovely Ederson save in there as well. Lovely. He went flying across, but instead of palming the ball away, he caught it and landed with it like it was the 1970s.
Yeah,
That is quite
very retro.
Very. Anyway, Bournemouth hosting City this weekend.
Yeah, the first fixture at the Etihad is not a good memory for them as well.
6-1.
I was
Were you there?
Yes, I was. It was the Doku parade.
Yeah.
Yeah. God.
Scored a goal
4 assists.
4 assists, yeah. Yeah, well.
Has anyone ever got 5 in a Premier League game? No.
Never happened. Not yet. Anyway, down the bottom, pending points deductions and appeals and that kind of thing, situation is currently Burnley and Sheffield United, joint bottom, 7 from safety, looking a little bit done for. 5 teams then within 5 points of each other, battling not to be team 3. That's Brentford, Palace, Forest, Everton and Luton, who still have a game in hand on the others. Saturday at 3, 2 of that quintet face off at Selhurst Park. Crystal Palace taking on Burnley. It's going to be a debut match for Palace's new manager, Oliver Glasner. To fill us in a little bit on what to expect from Oliver, let's hear now from Raphael Honigstein. Rafa, wiki me this. Who is Oliver Glasner?
He's a former Austrian player, second division, who had a long career that came to a halt when he had a bit of a head injury and was advised not to continue playing. Then became a coach at SV Ried, the club that he played for. Then went to Linzer ASK, LASK, really successful there. And then he made the step up to the German Bundesliga and had real big success at Wolfsburg, taking them to the Champions League. And of course, Frankfurt then followed with the famous Europa League win and surviving the group stage in the Champions League in the second season. But he does have a habit of falling out with sporting directors a little bit. That happened at Wolfsburg, happened at Frankfurt, which is why after 2 years each at both of those clubs, he moved on again.
Okay. What kind of football do you think the Palace fans can expect from him?
I think slightly more expensive football than under Roy Hodgson. Maybe that's not too difficult, but he does like to be quite direct. He does like to press. He does like to commit man forward. He doesn't have a fixed formation. Played mostly with 3 at the back at Frankfurt, mostly with 4 at the back at Wolfsburg. But the principles are quite similar. There's always a big emphasis on pressing a lot, running a lot, and trying to be quite fast and direct going forward. So I think pretty exciting for Crystal Palace. I think ultimately there's a ceiling to what he can do there in relation to the strength of the other clubs in, let's say, the top third of the table. But I think he's going to give it a go, and that should make for some interesting times, I think.
Okay, he's only the second Austrian ever to manage in the Premier League after Ralf Hasenhüttl at Southampton. Where would you put him on the scale of Bundesliga managers in the Premier League, with, say, Klopp at one end and Felix Magath and St. Cheese at the other, passing by way of Jan Seifert? Where would you put Glasner?
he's much closer to Klopp than to Magath. A lot of people think he's underrated because he's a little bit quiet. I mean, he can be quite outspoken, but he is not a big character, and I think people tend to dismiss him a little bit because of that, and perhaps don't look at the coaching qualities as much. But a lot of people are convinced that he is really cut out for very big things. I think in Germany he would have only taken a really big job after Frankfurt and Wolfsburg, but he was very, very excited and determined really to go to the Premier League. It perhaps isn't the most immediately promising engagement in terms of fighting against relegation and so on. He thinks that he can do enough there to either take Palace up the table or show that he is ready to do it at a bigger club.
Magnificent. Raphael, thank you so much. Raphael Honigstein. Yeah, interesting. So Europa League winning manager, rocking up at Selhurst Park.
Palace obviously used to be nicknamed the Glaziers. It's quite similar, isn't it?
It's quite similar, isn't it?
Glasniers. No.
So they're taking on Burnley, as I say, which is not a bad opening fixture, is it?
Probably the best one you could ask for, yeah.
Right. Okay. Palace on the longest run without a clean sheet of any team in the Premier League. 14 matches now. Anyway, there you go. They had that 1-1 draw. That's another game that happened since our last show. A 1-1 draw away at Goodison on Monday night, which... Did you see that at all? No. Did you? Duncan, give us a one-line match.
Yeah, I mean, it was obviously a big game in the relegation battle. I mean, I think Everton would have come out that disappointed they didn't win. They didn't really get going. Palace...
They haven't won for a while.
No, since...
8 Premier League games?
Yeah, since early December. And it's kind of... Those sort of runs sneak up on you and, you know... They
sleepwalk towards relegation.
Yeah. Obviously, Everton are in a very odd situation where they've had a points deduction, there's another one pending, but then the original one might get reduced, so we literally don't know what their correct position is. But
for now, they've moved out of the bottom 3 on goal difference above Luton with that draw on Monday. Everton have what looks like a difficult fixture this weekend, Saturday 3:00 away at Brighton. But then, as I mentioned, extraordinarily, last season they went down to the Amex and they beat them 5-1.
That was crazy. It was a real Brighton at their going from the sublime to the ridiculous sort of phase where they have a game like that. I think they then went and beat Arsenal 3-0 at the Emirates 6 days later. So that was kind of where they were at that point, and then got smashed by Newcastle in the game after that.
Yeah, and that's exactly what they don't want right now, because they're really looking for consistency. I was at Sheffield United Brighton and I spoke to De Zerbi after the match, and he's such a fascinating character, honestly. Not in a predictable way, because it's not like the way he talks, it's not like Jurgen Klopp fascinating. It's not engaging in this sense.
He's not a charismatic guy.
Yes, but he says things that are very surprising. He just drops it. Like we were talking about the wingers, about the Jingra and Mitoma, and how much freedom they have and how creative they are. And he's like, you can talk about creativity about regarding them, but one of the most creative players I have on the team is Van Hecke. Van Hecke is a defender. So you think of him, you associate him with this branded football of like attacking, and then he just spills out that his defender is like the most creative player in his team. He does these things, and he talks about the consistency of results because he's pleased with the performances. He said, no, we got really good performance. I can't control the results. I love that. I really do. I find Brighton fascinating in him even more.
The way he plays is really interesting. I mean, he goes flying out of defence to go and try and win the ball high up the pitch and things like that. Like, it's very kind of on brand for De Zerbi. I think with Everton it's interesting because they're one of the biggest XG underperformers. I think the biggest, aren't they? And there must be such a tension for Dyche between wanting, cause, he's not normally shy about kind of defending his record and saying we're actually better than you think, but also he must hate XG, so he doesn't want to invoke that. But that would be quite a good way to sort of make his point that they are playing better than it seems. Yeah,
I think Dyche would. I think he probably accepts it in private. But he can't be seen.
Can't say
the brand would not survive him.
No way.
So it's a tricky one. Yeah, I mean, Dominic Calvert-Lewin's got the biggest underperformance of any player in the Premier League this season in terms of XG. I mean, that's the issue, is that I mean, Calvert-Lewin was brilliant in the game at Brighton last season, I seem to recall. And
So Everton are the biggest underperformers on XG, and he is the biggest.
he's the
among
culprit. And like we all know that an in-form Calvert-Lewin is a top half centre forward. So if he can, no one underperforms their XG forever, with a few exceptions in pub football. So if he can hit form, I think that will be the key. And yeah, maybe Brighton's a good place to do it.
All right. At the same time, Saturday afternoon, Man United are hosting Fulham. Man United have got 5 wins in a row in all competitions. Yeah. 5 wins in a row that have all featured Casemiro, who a lot of people say not playing that well, but when he's playing, they seem to do well. Is that fair? Casemiro?
He did come off at half-time, didn't he, of the Luton game, sort of for his own good, because
Yes.
it looked like he was going to get sent off. But yeah, no, he does make a big difference to them.
Should we talk more about Rasmus Højlund then?
Yeah,
His incredible scoring run.
Yeah, I mean, they are on a great run. I still think their wins haven't always been massively convincing. They tend to win by 1 goal. I mean, their goal difference is +1. What's amazing, I was looking at this, so over the part, including this season and the previous 2, so that's a pretty long stretch. Their Premier League goal difference in that whole time is +16. So that's about 100 games plus.
They do that in a month back in their heyday.
But like that's a crazy level of like mediocrity over a sustained
and
period.
you've hit the nail on the head that they win more than they lose, but most of their wins are by 1 or 2 goals, and then they'll
they
go
get
and lose
smashed.
7-0 at Anfield and stuff.
Yeah,
So
it is weird.
they are an eternal work in progress. I mean, obviously this week has seen Jim Ratcliffe start talking officially about the club, and it does feel like they are inching a new era. But I mean, on the pitch, it's still a work in progress. But wins are wins. So
I think what's huge, you mentioned Casemiro, central midfielder there. I think I believe the absence this weekend of João Palhinha, or how should I say João, Natalie?
João.
Yeah.
Yeah, João Palhinha. Yeah, he's suspended.
I'm not sure there's a single player who's as irreplaceable to a Premier League team as Palhinha is to Fulham. Like, he is so good when he plays, and they are so much worse when he doesn't. And that fact alone would make me think United would be big favourites and will probably win this game. He's suspended, I think he's already got the 10 yellows.
Yeah.
he simply made too many tackles.
Yeah, he is. He's this yellow card machine. Like because he tackles so much.
Don't say that. That sounds awful.
But he is. I think he was the first player to 10 yellows last season as well of anyone in the league.
No player needs the introduction of blue cards more than
Palhinha, he'd really benefit from that. But he's just so good for them, and they really can't replace him.
Yeah, you talk about Man United not being able to control matches, and a lot of that, you see a player like João Palhinha, and he does the dirty work for them, because he just
Too
runs
dirty
sometimes he misses it a little, but yeah, he completely dominates midfield, and the way he plays everywhere just so comfortably, and Fulham, they have a very poor away form. I think they just have 1 away win.
On the opening weekend.
Yeah. Here's another worrying stat for Fulham. They've only won once at Old Trafford in the last 51 years. That's right, 51 years.
But Rodrigo Muniz has been scoring
he's
goals.
on fire, isn't he?
Yes. No, he really struggled with that, because he got to Fulham, and then when they were in the Championship, and then he went on loan for Middlesbrough. He came back. He was very unlucky with injuries. Then Fulham signed Broha, and so we thought, okay, he's not going to get many chances, but now he's scoring, enjoying it, and it's good news definitely for Fulham fans, and it's a nice story as well.
Excellent. Other games this weekend, Sunday 1:30, you got Wolves, sexy Wolves against Sheffield United. Wolves have won 5 of their last 8 games. Interesting.
Saw them last week at the Spurs Stadium, Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, and they were really good. Yeah. I mean, really impressive. Like, they just have such a threat on the counter. Pedro Neto is just so good, and he was playing mainly on the left, which is very rare to get like a left-footed quick winger. It felt like a bit of a throwback, but he was deadly, and obviously then his assist for the winner, he's charging down the right-hand side. But yeah, he a classic one of those players. If he could stay fit, he really could be. I think everyone would be after him in the summer. Maybe they still will be.
I mean, he's got 9 assists, and he's been injured a lot. That's decent.
Very. Villa are taking on Forest at 3:00, and West Ham up against Brentford, who are something of a bogey team for them, on Monday. Hammers have in fact lost 3 in a row in the Premier League and have been beaten in all 5 of their Premier League meetings with the Bees. Is Lucas Paquetá back?
Not sure, but actually he would rival Palhinha for how much how reliant one team is on one player. I mean, their form has fallen off a cliff since he.
And not only the form, because the main complaint from West Ham fans is that they're not enjoyable to watch, and Lucas Paquetá, he completely changes that. Yeah.
And using Charlie's cutting-edge goal difference analysis, West Ham the only team in the top half with a negative goal difference as it stands. So,
A negative goal difference.
They've been, it kind of sort of mirrors last season in the sense that the fans were very unhappy at this point in the season, and then European football came back, and obviously they inched their way to glory. But it does feel like Groundhog Day a little bit.
Okay. Well, they're in the last 16 of the Europa League. They don't know yet who their opponent is, because that's going to be decided by Thursday night's Europa League playoff second legs. There's a Conference League playoff second legs as well. And it's all happening. I'm going to be across it with a very special goal show. If you hear this, before we're going from 5:30 on TNT and Discovery Plus. Yeah. Guaranteed 4.5 hours of it. And if it goes to extra time, it could go longer.
How many times will you say the word aggregate, do you reckon?
I think a lot. Remember, we've got different languages. There'll be Jules, there'll be Rafa throwing in some,
Austrian
variations. Yeah. So, that's exciting. And,
we didn't mention, actually, obviously, Arsenal losing in Porto does not help the Premier League's case for getting a fifth spot in the Champions League.
Wait, have you got the table there?
Let me see. Obviously,
England were third going into.
So it was Italy who've been doing really well.
Yeah.
Another set of good results. Then Germany, and the top two teams get a fifth side.
Yeah.
There are other nations who are looking to improve. For example, France, who are battling to broaden their presence at the top table.
So as it stands, obviously this is ahead of all the games on Thursday, although it doesn't involve any Premier League teams. So as it stands, Italy are on an average of, so it's basically worked on an average of your teams and et cetera, et cetera. Italy's on 15.1, so they're top. Bundesliga second on 14.1, and the Premier League's on 13.9, so it's pretty tight.
Is there anyone like the Greek Super League sneaking up behind the Premier League then?
Our old friends, the Spanish, are on 13, but I think Opta have got a predicted model for it, and it still has the Premier League as the most likely to.
Because they'll all come back on the Thursday night as well. I mean, there hasn't been any Thursday night involvement.
And you'd expect Liverpool, Brighton, City,
Premier
Arsenal
League
to get.
Yeah, I mean, presumably even like Liverpool, if Liverpool win the Europa League or if City win the Champions League, both of those feel fairly likely.
Yeah,
that would basically do it.
Yeah. That's why the Premier League still is the favourite to.
And who do Opta have as the second team getting there? Fingers crossed.
I think it was Italy. Yeah. So we'll see. I mean, obviously Inter again could do the business.
We'll see. That's going to be such a big game with the Civitas.
But it feeds into our chat a minute ago about Manchester United, because they're only now 3 points off fifth place. So
they have kind of crept up, and because Spurs aren't playing this weekend. United could go level on points with Tottenham. They would, of course, be behind because of said goal difference.
Not if they win 13-0.
Yeah.
So
the form Boylan's in.
But it's nice, isn't it? It'll be lovely for football to have Manchester United fans cheering on Liverpool in the Europa League final.
Yeah.
So special memories.
Very nice, Duncan. What a lovely way to finish today's Totally Football show. Thank you for being here today. Natalie, thank you for coming by. Hope you have a great time at Wembley. Charlie, not sure what you're up to this weekend, but...
No Spurs, so weekend off.
Oh, nice. Well, enjoy.
Thank you.
Listener, I know you'll join me in thanking Liam and Charlie in the booth, and then receive my grateful appreciation of your, ears and things. We will be hoping to borrow them again Sunday evening / Monday morning when we look back on the weekend's action. So perhaps you'll join us then. Have a great weekend in the meanwhile. From all of us here, it's goodbye. The Totally Football Show podcast is available 3 times a week, bringing you all the football news you could reasonably be expected to care about. We've got views, we've got stats, we've got analysis, we've got some of the best football writers around, and the whole thing is absolutely free. So have a listen on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or all the usual places by clicking on the link below.